Okay, this is going to be the tutorial video for our lab number 1 in the uh, Castles of Europe course. We're going to be using Fusion 360 for the first time, and we're going to be building a mock-up of sorts of Beaumaris Castle. This is a castle that is very symmetrical in terms of how symmetrical any of these castles really were. This is probably on the highest scale that we're going to find in our course. And yet, that said, what we're going to learn through this is not necessarily a tutorial about how to perfectly trace a plan that already exists. This is a tutorial that's supposed to be to teach you how to use constraints in the sketch palette, and how to do things like mirroring in order to make a perfectly symmetrical castle, with the knowledge that these castles were not by any means symmetrical as built. There are many, many factors that go into why that's the case. But I wanted to make sure that we learned a lot of different ways to do things. So that being said, another aspect of this tutorial is I'm not going to necessarily show you the best way to do some of the sketching in general. Really, what I'm after is to try to introduce you to as many of the different tools as I can. So as you go through this, you may say, "Oh, well, why did I mirror that at this point? Why didn't I do all the sketches first and then mirror?" It's all part of the process of just sort of understanding how mirroring works. So let's get started. Um, so we go to Castles of Europe. We have our I already have a project created. If you're at this stage, you can create a new project. And what I've wanted you all to do is just kind of call it, you know, your name and then Castles and then the year. So 2021 in this case. Okay, so I'm gonna ignore that for now. It's still going to be called new project, and you'll see that's going to kind of get buried down at the bottom. I don't really want to work off of that project. I'm going to stay in this one, so I'm going to double click on that one. And I've already created a tutorial one, which you can see here. So I'm going to create a new one. Um, right here, I'm going to go up to File, New Design. Yours may not do this. And just right off the bat, I'm just going to save it. Okay, so if it opens like this for you all, you can just hit the Save button. And if we know that we are in the correct project, and I am, I'm going to also name this one with my last name and call it Lab 01, just to give it a slightly different name. Okay, so that's fine. So this is tutorial, that'll be Lab 01. That's fine. The next thing that we need to do is in MS Teams, you're going to be downloading a file. So the file that we're going to want in Teams is this one. I went to Class Materials and I selected, in this case, this is the date that we're looking for, and it's going to be the Beaumaris plan. So I'll click on that, and you can do anything with this. If you want to just kind of view it first, you can. You can just hit download there. Okay, so when I hit download here, it'll go to my downloads folder. So I'm going to hit close, and that's fine for that. So I already have it downloaded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first create a construction, a canvas in here. So I'm going to hit insert canvas. And it's saying, what canvas do you want? And I'm going to say insert from my computer, and I can just quickly go to my downloads folder here. And where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it on this point, but I want to make sure I get the orientation right. So if TOP is spelled, if the word top is actually oriented correctly, then you're in the right view. I'm going to drop this in here. And I can see pretty quickly that it's rotated incorrectly 90 degrees. So I'm going to grab that little circle, turn it up, and then I'll just sort of generally place it over here. This is going to be not at all at the correct scale. Another thing you might notice is this is in meters. If yours is not, you can go to the document settings and right here under meetings, hit this little units button and make sure that you're in meters, okay? I'm going to hit cancel for now. So I should now have this little folder called canvases. I'm going to open up the Beaumaris plan just with this little caret here. and I'm going to say calibrate. Okay, so I'm just going to right click on that canvas and say calibrate. And then now I'm going to move my cursor over to the bottom left corner because you can see that there's a scale here. So calibrate means essentially scaling the canvas. So I'm going to click once in this corner by the 0, and then another in this corner by the 30. And you can see it's at 0.02 meters, so it's tiny, tiny. I'm going to just start typing 30 and hit enter. And you'll notice it'll go all white. Well, that's because the canvas has been increased in size very, very much. And so I need to mouse wheel out. I'm going to push the mouse wheel forward in this case to get it to move out. Then I'll see the entire thing. And you can see right over here, this is our scale of our castle. Plan. So let's go to move this. Let's edit the canvas one more time. And I think it's just good practice to keep things in the positive, right? So here's your axis right here for your Z, and here's your axis in red for your X. I'm just going to keep everything in the positive zone right about there. And that'll be fine for now. And I'll just hit OK. So we're scaled and we're roughly positioned. That's about all we need. Our next step is going to be to let's maybe change some things like the environment. So if you haven't yet, you can see I've switched to dark sky. You may be in something like this. I really prefer to keep this kind of dark, especially if I'm going to have something with a white background for my canvases. Another quick thing to do once we've got everything oriented here is we're going to start drawing directly on top of this. So really, this is all going to be one single sketch. So I'm going to go up to Create and then Create Sketch. And if I wanted to, I could actually pull this out. I'm going to pin it to the toolbar in case I ever want to do this again. So for now, I'll just hit Create Sketch here. And now it's asking, well, what if you're maybe looking at it like this? When you hold down Shift and middle mouse button, you can rotate. Maybe you're looking at it like this, saying, okay, what plane do you want to sketch on? And for us, we want to sketch on the XZ plane like this. And that's going to get us started. Okay, so to get started, this is basically a rectangle with some towers attached to it. So let's just start with this 2-point rectangle. I'm going to move my cursor without clicking anything over to this general area and then zoom in with the mouse wheel a bit. And what I'm doing right now is just generally eyeballing where this would maybe meet that. And I can correct it later. And I can see that there's some lines here that are helping me a bit. This is not too bad. So I'm going to go maybe from here and then zoom out without clicking anything. I'm going to zoom out by pushing the mouse wheel forward. Then I'm going to move over to where I want to go and mouse wheel in until I'm going to keep these lines, this line here and this line here. I'm going to finally click whenever that's about at the right spot. I'm going to say that that's okay. Okay. So one thing we can do generally is say after we've created this and we want to make, let's say we want to make a minor adjustment. You can hit the select key and you can grab that one piece and kind of move it around. I don't think I really necessarily needed to in that case. It's pretty close. This one I might want to just move out a little bit, but you'll notice as you zoom in and out that if you adjust it on the bottom, it might be wrong on the top. So it's kind of hard to decide. It really does not matter. That's part of the lesson of this, is that this is not a perfect plan. So since it isn't perfect anyway, I think it could be really useful to keep these to be really just straight dimensions. And since they are actually quite close to flat dimensions, let's hit the D key, which is called Sketch Dimension. And if you had something selected, it will dimension that line. So if I didn't have anything selected, I could go to Create, and Sketch Dimension, and you can see there's a little D key here. I'm going to select this one, and you can see barely in there. It's a little confusing, but it says 66.1. I'm just going to round this off to 66, and I'm going to do the same thing to this top, and I'm going to round that one off to 71, let's say. Okay, and since this is a triangle with the 2-point rectangle tool, we know that all of these are going to be the same size on these two as well. That's part of the constraints. The next thing we want to do is create guidelines for ourselves. So I'm going to create a line tool. One of the things that they really do very well in Fusion is they tell you when you're at the midpoint or when things are intersecting. So I'm going to see, you see this little triangle symbol, that's going to tell me I'm at the midpoint of that part of the rectangle. And I'm going to create another one right there. I'm going to finish the vertical, and I'm also going to do them here. These aren't super important in this particular case, but if you ever wanted to mirror something across these lines, you might want that. So then I'm going to hit the select tool. I'm going to select each one with holding the shift key. And all of these are going to be what are called construction lines. So I can right click and say normal construction, or you can see just the X key. I tend to just use the hotkey for this. But in this case, I'll just hit the construction button there when I right clicked. So that's fine, or you can just hit X in the future. So we're good. If this all looks like one square, that when you're hovering over it, you're in good shape. So let's create some thickness for these walls. That's pretty easy. Another thing you can do is if something is contiguous, like all of these lines, you can simply double click them once and it'll select all of them. And then we're going to hit the offset key, which is up here under modify. And I'm going to start pulling this in. And I think, let's say 5.5 meters for that. Okay. So that's going to be the thickness of our walls, 5.5 meters. Okay, that's useful for us. We also need to do corner towers. So to do the corner towers, we're going to use a new tool. I'm going to go up to the 3-point circle tool. So we'll create these as perfect circles all the way through, and then we'll trim out later. So I'm going to hit 3-point circle right here. And I'm just going to eyeball to right about there where that intersects. That's one point where my circle intersects. Here's another place that the circle intersects. And then I'll just sort of move it up until I feel comfortable with tracing that out. I can also change this dimension. So instead of a wall length, I'm going to do, or circumference, I'm actually going to do a diameter. So if I select that circle and hit the D key, instead of, I don't know, instead of 13.84, let's just round that up to 14 meters. Okay, and this can help you in the future if you want to create, if you wanted to remember something and you say, okay, well, I know that this particular tower is always 14 meters in diameter. That can be really helpful for you in the future. So I'm going to select the offset tool and give it a thickness as well. I'm going to pull these in, and these are going to be, let's say, -3.75, and it's negative because it's going kind of this direction instead of that direction. And I'll hit enter. Okay, good. So we've got our first. Let's use our first construction lines by selecting each of these and creating another tower in the bottom over here. So if I have these two selected, the mirror line I want is going to be this one. So I have the mirror tool pulled up here, but you can find it here under Create Mirror. And I already have two objects selected, so then it wants me to select a mirror line. So I'll click on mirror line and select this one and then hit OK. And just like that, you'll notice our best example yet of the fact that this is not a perfectly symmetrical design. Okay, this is going to look off. So just preparing you for that. Let's do this to the other side while we're at it. So in this case, we're going to select 4 pieces, hold down Shift, and we'll just do it to the other side as well, just to make it. I'll hit mirror here, and this is going to be our mirror line on the vertical. Hit OK. All right, good. We're getting there. Let's draw some 45-degree lines right here. Now these aren't perfectly 45, but we're going to pretend that we don't care, about that. We're going to make these perfect. So I'm going to just start drawing a line, and more than simply by, you can type in how long you want it, but if you can also see that there's this degrees coming right here. Okay, what I want to do is just hit the Tab key on my keyboard and type in 45. Okay, and if I want to lock that, I could hit Tab again, and now this line will, no matter what, it'll always be 45 degrees. And if I pull it up here, I can also get it to intersect with that line. That's what that little X means right there. It'll glow green if you've got it right. Okay, so that's a perfectly 45-degree line. Since I didn't actually set the dimension for that, this is kind of interesting. You can kind of pull on these and do some fun stuff. I'm going to Control Z to undo that, just because you can see all those constraints that are going on that might be causing some trouble. Speaking of constraints, one thing I think I might try to do here, just to kind of keep it consistent, I'm going to Control click or Shift click both of these circles, and I'd kind of like to be able to put this down right here onto this line somewhere. And that should, because of the mirroring, that should also affect all of these. Now you'll see that this circle is also on that, and this one is also on that. Okay, so that might be a little bit earlier in the step-by-step instructions, but I've done it right here, which is fine. And this is our 45 degrees. We can also, again, just do our really quick mirroring. I'm going to mirror off this line. Okay, I'll select both of those again, and I'll mirror it again. Okay, so now we've got those all in all four corners. Let's start working on this little D-shaped tower over here. So this is going to take us a few different tools. There's many ways that we could do this. I'm going to start with just a simple line from this corner and move up, and it doesn't really matter where I stop. I'm going to stop deliberately a little bit past where it starts to curve, just so we can kind of understand how the tangent constraint is going to work. So I'm going to create a 3-point curve. Where are we? A little 3-point arc, I should say. I'm going to start from this point, and then I'm going to start wherever I believe this one should begin, here. And then I'll move up until this is about where I want it. Right about there. Okay? So there's a problem. You can see as you zoom in here, there's a bit of like a little hitch right here. So if we wanted this to flow perfectly into that circle, we would want this to constraint to tangent of the circle that creates that arc. That's fortunately another thing that Fusion does really well. We're going to select the arc, then the line, and I'm going to click this tangent constraint, and keep an eye right there when I do that. Okay, that's moved the line down to be shorter so that it fits a little bit better. Now I can also, if I wanted to select this line, I can also pull that in. There's a lot of things that you can do. You can see it's going to start to affect lots of different things. I'm going to pull this out a bit. You can see there's lots of options in how you want to adjust things, but really what we want to learn from this is eventually things are going to get to a point where the arches are not going to they're not going to fit perfectly. So this is not assuming that this is going to be a perfect line. So I'm going to do something kind of fun here. I'm going to leave this, I don't know, somewhere like that, and I'll push this in and, just kind of have some fun here just to sort of get it, well, basically there. And another constraint that I have is if I wanted to click this to here, I can then say, okay, well now this also needs to be tangent to this. And if we look at this line and this line, they should be equal. But if they weren't of equal length mathematically, if I were to say delete this, that's a little constraint, that's a little symbol for the constraint for tangency. If I were to select this object and then say, instead of just parallel, I want this to be equal to that. You see the little equal constraint right there. And if I were to then select this object and make it tangent to this one, it may tell me here, it's over constrained. And that's because if this is equal to this and this is tangent to that, then this is already tangent. Okay, so there's just a few different ways that you can work at this. So that's what I wanted you all to see really quickly, is how that worked. So let's do the other really simple stuff. So I'm just going to give myself a sketch line. I can tell this is the pivot point, the center of the arc. So if I hover over it, it'll give me this nice green line. Love that. I can also just simply go to the center of the arc. I'm going to give myself a construction line right here. And what I'm going to do is just draw this interspace. This is an arrow loop right here, so I'm going to pretend that that's not there. And we'll explain in class why we're doing it that way. But it's not especially important right now. Actually, what I'd like to do is extend that just a bit further. Okay. Let me make that just a little bit longer so I have something more to go on here. I'm going to go maybe from here and just give myself a nice construction line all that goes all the way through. It's not necessary at all, but it helps me with this mirroring. So what I'm going to do really quickly here is click and just do a really basic sketch. This is just the very simple tracing portion of our program. And you can see what I really like about that is it's really helping guide you to keep you nice and square. And I'm just going to end that right here. So if I want to double click on this, I'm going to take the easy way out and just mirror it across this line and hit OK. Okay, so that's going to make things nice and clean. We now have some objects I think that we could mirror over to the opposite side. So let's do that. I'm going to double click on this one, and then hold shift and double click on this, and on the opposite side. And I'm going to do another mirror, and I'm going to select this line. Okay, again, this is not going to match perfectly. There's lots of reasons why, mostly due to the way that this was originally designed and drawn, but also probably the way that it was scanned. That's, of course, the more modern way of looking at it. The more realistic way of looking at it is that it was never actually, it might be perfectly surveyed, but it's very likely that this is not a perfectly symmetrical building. In fact, I know that it is not. So let's work on the very top up here, and it's going to be a similar process. We're going to use mostly the same kinds of tools. I'm going to start with the outside, similar to the way we did with D-shaped towers on the sides. And I'm going to start drawing up here. Let me go backwards with that just a moment. Let's do this with even faster. We can do this with a simple 2-point rectangle tool. And I'm going to move from, oh, I don't know, right about where this starts to curve here. And I'm going to pull it all the way down to right about where this meets that. This line right here meets this one for the outside lines, and that'll give us a lot of lines really quickly. Okay. Again, there's 100 ways to do all of this. This is just the way that I'm choosing to do it today. I'm going to create a 3-point arc from here, and I'm going to guess where this one comes down. Maybe there. That's probably a little off. But what I haven't shown you is you don't necessarily always have to click the constraint. It's going to lock in if you're really close. So I'm going to stop that right there. And since this was already this is colinear, this point, I can pull this in and just adjust it later, and it's always going to stick to that line, which is nice. Colinear is another one of our constraints that you usually would use with points. Okay, that's a good start. Let's do something similar with these interior spaces. We're going to ignore all passages because these don't go all the way up. So we're going to just create the massing part of the building first. I'm going to do another few of these on this side, maybe just do this square. Now this might be slightly out of order from the way that it is in your step-by-step instructions, but that's okay for now. So here's some really quick ways to do that. I'll do another 3-point circle from here. I'll go from there to here and just pull that out until it's roughly. And this is 7 point. Let's just change this to 7.5 and say we're happy with 7.5 meters as a straight number. Okay. I'm going to select that and I'm going to offset that to get the inside of this spiral staircase. And let's just say negative 2.4. And that'll be fine. Okay, again, this is sort of eyeballing. Sometimes we want really proper whole numbers, and sometimes we want it to be a little bit more custom. It's kind of depending on how you all want to create your castles. So let's go to the 3-point arc tool again, and we just want to do this last bit here, and I'll be fine with this once it's tangent. So just be happy with that. Okay, good. Not too bad. So we can also create a mirror line here. I'm going to do that. I may have done that earlier in... Oh, apologize. I hit escape on that just so I knew I had the wrong tool up. I shouldn't use a line for that. So right where this hits a triangle, you can see it, another little triangle icon. That's going to tell me I'm in the midpoint. I'll hit X. And now I can do the same kind of mirror operation. I'm going to hold down Shift and select anything that is not in the opposite side. I think that ought to be it. All right, so let's mirror that. And I'll hit OK. That's roughly all right. Okay, so not a perfectly symmetrical gatehouse. Again, we don't care, right? Not that important. Let's repeat this for the South Gatehouse. You know, we could redraw, and I think in your instructions it has you redraw the South Gatehouse. So let's do that. I mean, again, this is really similar. If you guys want to fast forward to this bit, it's going to be really similar to how we did the gatehouse on the north side. But if you just want to follow along, that's fine too. So we're going to create a quick little sketch here. And we'll be okay with that. And create... I think I actually do want to pull this out just a little. Okay. And then we'll create a 3-point arc. Okay, we want this to be tangent. So what we may need to do now is pull this line in until that starts to align a little bit better. That's a little better. Okay. We also want to make sure that we get a proper line. So this, you may think that this is perfectly symmetrical here, but if the gatehouse is shifted left or right, you know, it may be, you're going to want to zoom in and make sure that you're not trying to stick to that you're trying to stick right in the center of this line instead. And that's what I'm going to do here, is create an additional mirror line right there. Okay. We're really moving pretty quickly now. I think just to be quick, I'm going to eyeball this one and do the same here. I'm going to assume that these are pretty square. And I'm going to do my 3-point arc here. Now this might not click perfectly. Yeah, see, there's tangent right there. So that's going to be a challenge. What I may need to do here, let me undo that. So I need to extend these out a bit. So I'm going to just pull a line out here. And I'm going to do my 3-point arc from there. And this is a useful trick. Okay, so if I'm moving out this way, and then I want to see where that intersects that, you see how I get 2 lines? If I just pull generally out as best I can in one direction, that's going to make sure that I know that that's going to intersect. Okay, so that's pretty useful. I'm going to select this and pull it in a bit. Okay. And I'm going to click here to here. And here's where I think this is also quite useful. We can say, I want this little piece of line to be equal size to that one. So I'm going to do constraint equal and click on that one. Oh, looks like I'm over constrained. So that was a mistake. Let's do this. I'm going to create a nice quick little construction line right here, and I'm going to make sure that this point snaps to this one. So I'm going to click on both points, and I'm going to see if I can get a coincident constraint. Okay, so now those are both in the same place. I can grab this and pull it down with the select key. Good. Okay, so that was a little convoluted, but it's useful to know how the constraints work, especially since we did get to use a new constraint, which was the coincident constraint. So those 2 points were in the exact same place, which is useful to have. Okay, I think all we have to do is these spiral staircases in the back. I'm just going to create another 3-point arc. These are certainly a bit off, but that's okay. Okay. And just to cheat, since I knew I had to trim that out anyway, I'm going to use that same center point and pull this out, and I'm going to say, 2.4. And this may not be exactly how it is in the step-by-step instructions, but I wanted to take a little shortcut there. Okay. I think we're in okay shape. Now we might want to do some things like this is clearly another spiral staircase here. We might have wanted to add the spiral staircases since they extend all the way through the building. Let's say we're okay for now. So what I'm going to do is make sure I do my mirroring, and then we have to do quite a bit of trimming before this is all complete. I don't need that one. Just these interior pieces. I'm going to double click a few of these. Okay. So I'm going to do a quick mirror. And I want to make sure that I select the correct line for that mirror. So I'm going to select the mirror line and say not this one, but this one. That's the one that I wanted. So I missed a piece, but that's okay. I can go back to objects, click 8 selected, and make it 9, and that will mirror this one as well. And that should do it. Okay, we've got lots of little pieces you can see as you hover over. So what do we want to do with this? Well, what we want to do, generally speaking, is we would probably want to treat each of these towers as a separate piece and keep these kinds of things kind of whole. But just to be fast, let's just trim out everything. So there's a little icon here under modify that says trim. You can also find it here, or just hit the T key. So now everything that we click, we're going to remove. So we want to be a little bit careful. So I'm going to go zoom in and see that there's some weird things in here. Anything that's an interior piece, I'm going to delete. I'm going to trim out. So I'm going to trim this one, this, anything that's on the inside. So like kind of in the dark parts, let's say, which are showing you what are the massing parts of the building. We don't need any of these. So we're going to keep on removing those. And we can create passages, not to worry. We'll create things like passages later. I'm just going to remove anything that is, see, that's an entire building. I don't need that. I don't need any of these. So either interiors or exteriors. Now there's an error there. So I think I need to do a quick thing to lock this up. Now this might not happen in your step-by-step instructions, but getting a quick autosave there. Don't worry if that happens. Okay, so what I want to make sure is that there are no holes in the entire envelope, interior or exterior. Again, we're getting an autosave. This is useful. You all probably should have saved before this. I'm going to keep going back to my trim key, and I'm going to make sure I get rid of everything in here. Now this part you may want to fast forward just to sort of fly through it because it's a little tedious here, but we just need to make sure that everything gets deleted correctly. I can get rid of these two, and you can see there's also this one little weird piece. You're going to find that on all four sides. So that little piece is going to be there in every corner. Again, usually I would treat these towers as separate because they're going to be higher, as we know, than the wall walk. But again, for now, we're just going to try to do this super quick. And I'm just cleaning things up here. Those. We're doing all right. Now that's going to be a question. So do we save this or that? I think we're just going to cut this right here and keep that as a square interior. But that's a decision to make. It's not really especially important. You'll redraw at the top when you extrude these towers here, so it's not really a big deal. There's still quite a few lines here that we don't need. And just keep cleaning up, going around. No interior pieces. Doesn't look like it. Okay, so I can tell that there is an error somewhere in here. There's a gap somewhere in this line because I can tell that this is not a single face as it should be. So let me go and select. No, it seems okay. All right, I take it back. I did skip something here, so you all will have to remember to catch that. Um, we can do that really quick. Let me. That's gonna make me crazy not to finish it properly. So I'll click these two, and I'll do another quick mirror. Hit OK, and I'll just quickly trim up this last bit. That's my fault. Okay. So if I switch to select, and you can see that all of this is blue, then you've done it correctly. Okay, so we're going to hit Finish Sketch, and now we're at the end of the tutorial part. What I'd like you all to do for homework is to repeat this process for the outer walls. So trace those out, use your various mirroring tools, things like that. And you're going to want to extrude these up. So the very end here, I'm going to make these 15 meters high and hit enter. Okay, if I really want to see this a little bit more clearly, I can maybe turn my canvas off and I can hit shift and have a look around. Okay, another thing that you can do is you could also potentially, if you wanted to, just to sort of give yourself some extra practice, you could do another sketch on top of this and finish this circle off, and then you could actually make these towers be at a different height. And same thing with the gatehouse keep on either side. So that's going to be it. I think you all should have everything that you need. If you have any questions, be sure to put that in Teams.